Hey, all you literary legends and luminaries. I'm Julie, and welcome to Booksmart. Today's book is a unique one. It's a memoir, but not your typical kind of memoir. It's called The Observable Universe, an investigation by Heather McAlden. The best word to describe this book is unique. This is what it says inside the book jacket. A moving original memoir of a young woman reckoning with her parents' absence, the virus that took them, and what it means to search for meaning in a hyper-connected world. Intriguing, yes? There are essentially three storylines that unravel in short segments. Segments that act more like a photo album or a scrapbook at times than the typical memoir. The first plot is McCalden's own, the death of both of her parents from AIDS, and at 10 years old being raised by her grandma, and the grief that she deals with in her adult life. The second storyline is one about HIV. It's discovery mostly, it seems like. And then the third is about the invention of the internet and how it grew to what it is today. The reason McCalden writes about the internet is threefold. First of all, its invention parallels that of the timing of AIDS. Secondly, because she knows little about her parents, she uses the internet to track down information about them, which relates more to her father than her mother. And finally, the way information spreads on the internet, well, it's kind of like a virus. She directs us how to read the book right at the beginning. And so let me read you her short little instructions that she writes. And she says, she calls it directions for how to read. This book is an album about grief. Every fragment is like a track on a record, a picture in a yearbook. They build on top of one another until, at the end, they form an experience. Now, at first, I didn't know if I liked her announcing her topic as such. But then as I began reading, it worked. What McCalden has done is capture these snapshots, some of her life and some of just fascinating info regarding the internet and viruses. Literally, most of them are snapshots of her parents' lives and at times her grief at growing up without parents, and they're all kind of woven together. Here's a scene on an airplane where McCalden watches the exchange between a father and a daughter. And we've all been on an airplane watching, people watching, and it's always fascinating the exchanges that we see. So you've got this dad and daughter, and she whips around and says, "Dad." I trembled. I can only assume I missed a line of dad humor as the two men shared a laugh that concluded with the word kids and a shrug. Grabbing my bag and coat, I understood that one day this girl's life would be disrupted by her father's death, but in no way upended. Her existence already neatly fit into a prescribed narrative, and this privilege would serve as a shield against the dark night of the soul. In fact, she could probably go her entire life without a soul. I stayed in my seat for much longer than was necessary. I wanted to make sure they were well off the plane before I disembarked. All I could think was, this girl has everything and has no fucking idea. And somewhere in that, my father appeared. So McCalden has been able to capture these moments and string these snippets of writings into comprehensive moments that fit together in a manner that is seamless. She's taken the time to write down these observations that many of us have but don't do anything with, and she not only writes them down, she makes meaning of them. Not only are such observations beautifully written, whether she's capturing sadness, satire, or sarcasm, she does so in ways that keep the readers on their toes. I found myself stopping after so many of these brief chapters just to think about what it was she had written. Her prose is like poetry when you spend more time thinking about what was written than it takes you to actually read what was written. You won't get much of a story about her parents simply because she herself knows little about them. It's more of an absence that she writes about, the gaping holes that were left in her life. When asked about her parents and how they contracted AIDS, she writes this: "I feel closer to the thing that killed them than to either of their identities because that thing still exists. It still roams the earth. It is my closest living relative." Isn't that gut-wrenching, but also beautiful in a sad way? The book is filled with this kind of stuff. When McCalden's grandmother dies, McCalden had already started writing a book about the spread of viruses and ideas of going viral. So let me read you this, and it appears about halfway through the book, and it's essentially what this book that we're reading became. I made handwritten timelines of the history of the internet and the history of AIDS and collaged them together to find their moments of intersection in the public consciousness. The timeline grew, became a spine, and vectors of different subjects ranging from microscopy to cat videos extended out from it. These vectors would be contained in the book, and the book itself would be organized in two parts, with the first concentrated on the history of biological viruses and the second on the viral metaphor. The timeline would rest at the center of the text, showing how the two aspects were inextricably intertwined. I wanted to make a book as if it were a strand of DNA. The tone would be edgy, ideas would be unpacked, arguments would be deployed with a sexy sleight of hand, formal tropes of the critical essay would be disrupted by casual yet poetic remarks. The book would fit the style that had been on trend for a while because the internet. The deeper I plunged into this material, the more feverish I became. Blood rose to the surface of my skin and thrummed. Dreams, when I had them, were of my computer screen. The project far exceeded my capacities as a scholar and writer. I lacked the discipline to investigate the ideas to their most brutal endpoints, and yet I couldn't stop working. The virus was lodged in my skull. I saw it entangled in everything, ceaselessly replicating. I was bearing witness to a vast, never-ending network of infection, and then one day it crystallized. The virus is a condition of being human, and its ascension to the cyber realm is simply the realization of its fullest evolutionary potential. We've moved online. The viruses have followed. Except my book wasn't about this. It wasn't about viruses or going viral. It wasn't about the internet. It was not about AIDS. It was not about a literal illness bleeding into the architecture of thought. It was not about a cultural moment. It was not about vision, networks, or observation. It wasn't about metaphor. When I lifted my head from the page, I saw something else. My book is about grief. And I have to tell you, you see those layers of grief throughout the book. And what's even greater about this book is you will learn fascinating tidbits about the internet, about viruses, about grief. One was about how when we first get the flu, before we're symptomatic, that the 48 hours following this exposure, we want to go out more. The virus modifies our behavior. It wants us to feel like going out when we're at our most contagious, so it can mingle too, as McCalden calls it. McCalden writes some excellent, profound images of the internet. And here's one called Cyberstrata. And I think we all know some of that she mentions here. When something stops trending, it is not stamped out or beaten down, but simply replaced. The old things, the worn out things, silently fall to the ocean floor, drifting in slow motion through shafts of light. Once settled on the abysmal plane, they calcify and repeat, and the process repeats. Information accumulates like mineral deposits, and through chemistry and pressure, crystalline bonds form between the dress, grumpy cat, creepypastas, keyboard cat, the dancing baby, baby shark, Gingham Style, LOL Cats, Friendster, Ice Bucket Challenge, the Harlem Shake, and Ed Balls Day. Our forgotten content builds up in layers of sentiment, and these layers contain our myths. They contain our distractions and vices. They contain our stories. In the future, people will read them and realize that we never once stopped to think about them. Do we ever really stop and think about all the crap we're doing on the internet? We don't, do we? We just move on to the next one as if the internet is made up of a continuous line of one-hit wonders that will never have the staying power of one-hit wonders of the 80s like She's a Beauty or Come On Eileen. McCalden forces you to think about these things without knowing you're thinking about these things. It's surreal. It's beautiful. I just adored my reading experience of this book. McCalden also writes about link rot, but she contends that the internet's purpose was never to archive, that it was built to mutate, just like a virus. So, what has the internet done to us, to our lives, to our past? Well, consider this, what McCalden has written about our timeline, our ever-changing timeline. But it wasn't in the past. All the information was right there, right now, simmering as if it were alive. And then I understood that the past, the way her grandmother had experienced it, was gone from the earth. Our past would be here forever, mutating in galvanic spheres, always on the other side of the glass, waiting for us. For as little as we think about Grumpy Cat or Baby Shark anymore, it's still there. Unless link rot happens, yet it still might be elsewhere lurking around. We cannot outrun our past. It's like a paradox. Yet McCalden finds meaning in all the nonsense on the internet. All those things everyone wastes time watching on social media. Well, McCalden has captured such moments, at least one. And there's Penguin Man. A man who rescued a penguin, then let it go, but the penguin didn't want to leave the man. When it finally left, the penguin comes and visits the man each year. And so here's what she writes about this relationship, and it's further on in the book. And so you see the grief unraveling. You feel this loss, yet is it really a loss when the little guy comes back every single year? So watching the video, something happens to me. A feeling which seems to have no real contextual basis rises like mist from some deep interior space. I try to pin it on the weathered nature of the man's visage, encrusted with lines, and on the creature itself, but I know it's a ruse. Whatever this feeling is, it is not a reaction to witnessing this otherworldly relationship, but has been there all along. This chemistry of images simply unlocked it. Again, I watch the wing flaps, the tears, the embrace, and suddenly I have the thought. Maybe it is possible to wander the face of the earth for a lifetime and finally, toward the end of it, have something, just one thing, make sense. She shows us how we find meaning in all this stuff around us, but we won't find meaning if we don't stop and pay attention. McCalden finds out some rather unsettling information about her father online. Even though she saw her father grow sickly with AIDS and eventually die, people online think he faked his death. Yet that's not the most upsetting part, which I'll let you read for yourself. As much as I adored this book, at times I wish McCalden would have given us a bit more about her parents. But maybe she truly has so little to pull from. The story of HIV doesn't seem very complete either at times. She has many sections of metaphors connecting all her themes together. She has other tidbits that I didn't always see such a strong connection to the other themes. However, in the end, I loved that she didn't write a typical memoir. I've read so many typical memoirs that I love these more experimental types. It is like an art form, like a scrapbook, and when you're done reading it, you do see the experience she promised you in the beginning. You understand how all those pieces fit together. It's marvelous. It's breathtaking, and it forces you to pause. You can't read it fast, for if you do, you're going to miss something. Reading McCalden's book gave me so many ideas about how to put together my own writing. It provided inspiration about how to play with the memoir genre. And it rejuvenated me. Between Question 7 and My Good Bright Wolf, and now The Observable Universe, I can't wait to see what other sorts of memoirs are being written. And I love that she didn't even call it a memoir, but an investigation. How clever is that? So yes, you need to read The Observable Universe. If you are a memoir reader, you definitely have to read The Observable Universe. It breaks the mold, and it worked. It wasn't creative just for the sake of being creative, but it was creative and it came together. I'm going to close with one more passage. This is what McCalden writes about how such new information or experiences can rewrite our past and essentially who we are and how we should deal with such trauma, grief, chaos even. It's a chapter aptly entitled, Not Rewrite You. And it's so fitting to end with this. It is hard not to let something rewrite you. The force of a thing can shred every cell of your nervous system and turn you into something you were not meant to be. Trauma breaks the tethers to gravity, sends you reeling into electric black space. And that could be your life drifting along the vector, extending endlessly through frozen clouds of dust. The problem is that your life can be rewritten, but the part of you that retains your original genetic imprint cannot. You become a mix of two timelines, a before and an after, and they spiral around each other in a continuous friction. But at the end of the day, you have a choice. Do you want to be the story of trauma, or do you want to write your own story? So I'm writing. You can do it too. Thanks for watching. As always, my goal at Booksmart is to get a little bit smarter, one book at a time.